Now, when you begin any work with young students, it is wise to start them off with practicing the presence, and then the art of meditation, and then after that, the books in any order that you may be led. And the reason is that right from the start, we want to bring the young student to this place of being above the letter of truth. That is, getting to the place of spiritual living, or living by grace. And this can't be done by the teaching of principles. It can only be done by the attaining of the ability to meditate. The principles go along with it, but the principles without the ability to meditate would really be nothing. Well, they would be just a mental practice. Because, as you will see, this ability to meditate is our greatest asset. As a matter of fact, it is one of the major reasons that our work is going around the world the way it is. And I will explain that to you. Even when these principles of healing, which constitute the message of the infinite way, were given to me, I found that no matter how many others I gave them to, and I gave them to many who were my patients, that it did little for them. They seemed unable to make them work. They seemed unable to accomplish anything with them, and eventually I learned the reason. No matter how much they worked with the letter of truth, in the back of their minds there was always this subconscious belief or unconscious belief that it was going to do something, or that it was intended to do something, even while making the metaphysical statement that perfection is and there's nothing to be done. Nevertheless, there was always that latent belief that, well, something is going to happen as a result of this. And then it was that through meditation, I saw this other life that the Master reveals to us. Now, to me, this has been the most fascinating part of my entire life since turning to a spiritual way of life. The Master says, "My kingdom is not of this world." And he also says, "My peace give I unto thee, but not as the world giveth." And Isaiah says, "Cease ye from man, whose breath is in his nostril, for wherein is he to be accounted of?" And when you add these all up, you are convinced that there is another realm. There is another kingdom beyond that which we see, hear, taste, touch, and smell, and that you do not have to die to enter this kingdom, because the Master did not teach death as a way to life. He taught life without the necessity for death. He taught that health, harmony, wholeness, abundance, completeness could be attained on earth. And that was his mission in being here was to heal the sick, raise the dead, preach this gospel, teach these principles, feed the hungry, and not to prepare them for death. At no point in his ministry does he prepare anyone for death, but rather for the overcoming of death and for the ability to live joyously, peacefully, harmoniously on earth. And he finally proves this in praying that his disciples be not taken from this world, that they be left in it, but not of it. And there you come to this mystical, spiritual kingdom, Christ kingdom, which is being in this world, but not of it. In other words, being in it, but not being affected by its evils, and not even being affected by its so-called good. In other words, those on the spiritual path, while always having an abundance and 12 baskets full left over, are never in bondage to wealth. They are never slaves to wealth, and they are never in fear if temporarily there should be no wealth around. In other words, those who live in the spiritual realm have this conviction of omnipresence. And where there is omnipresence, there is, of course, the fullness of life. And so meals would always be available, and so would housing and everything else necessary, regardless of any apparent absence of a surplus. That doesn't mean that a surplus isn't fine in its time and place, but those who have touched the spiritual kingdom can have it and enjoy it, or leave it alone. And this merely indicates that they are not living by the peace that this world giveth, but that they have attained a peace of another realm. Now you will eventually come in healing work to the same consciousness regarding the body. While you are on the material or mental level of life, your whole desire will be toward attaining health of body. In other words, you will rejoice in a heart that beats so much, and a digestive system, and an eliminative system, and all the rest of these things that humanly constitute good health. And whenever there is anything wrong, the object will be to do away with the wrong and restore the right. Now, as you come into the spiritual awareness, your entire thought on this changes, and you are no longer concerned with the heart or liver or lungs. You are no longer concerned with muscles or bones or brain. You are concerned only with one thing, and that is the realization of God, with no connection whatsoever to the human body. In the same way, when you are handling problems of supply, you never would permit it to enter your mind to want to add supply to anyone or to be concerned about their physical supply or employment. Your entire consciousness would be filled with the idea of realizing God's grace. This would have nothing whatsoever to do with money or houses or positions or automobiles. It would have entirely to do with God's grace. In other words, the thought that comes to you is along this line: man shall not live by bread alone, And therefore you don't concern yourself about getting bread for those who need it, or money, or anything that would buy bread. You abide in the awareness that man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God, and then you make yourself receptive to the word that is to proceed from the mouth of God. Now, whether you are dealing with a problem of supply, employment, or a problem of a physical or mental disease, you will no longer concern yourself with whether the fever is up or down, with whether the bone is knitting or not knitting, with whether the digestive system is digesting or isn't. Your entire treatment will be on a level that has nothing whatsoever to do with what the Master called this world. My kingdom, the spiritual kingdom, is not of this world. Therefore, we are not going to concern ourselves for this world, but for my kingdom. We are not going to concern, yes, we know that the patient will be very happy if their income doubles or trebles or quadruples, if their problem is supply, and we know they'll be very happy if the heart starts ticking normally again. But that is not our function in their lives. We are not doctors, and we are not almoners. We are here for the specific purpose of bringing the conscious realization of God to individual experience. Why? When we have done that, when we have brought the presence of God to an individual, there is fulfillment. God then appears as the necessary supply, whether it is the manna for Moses, or whether it is the cakes baked on the stone for Elijah, or the food that was brought by the ravens. Whatever it is, God will appear in whatever form is necessary to fulfillment at that time. In the same way, in human relationships, we do not enter the lives of our married students either to make them happier or to separate them, neither to bring them together nor to separate them, because we are not functioning psychologically, and we are not functioning to make human beings tolerate each other a little more. We are functioning to bring God realization to individual consciousness and let that do the work of bringing a couple together in spiritual harmony, or separating them in spiritual harmony, so that each may find their own destiny. It has been mistakenly believed that God created all marriages. And so it is said that what God hath joined together, let no man put asunder. And of course that's an erroneous statement. What God hath joined together, no man can put asunder. What God hath joined is forever and forever and forever. But very often what God did not join together may just as well be dissolved. But that is not your function to dissolve it, any more than it is your function to save it. Your function as a spiritual teacher, practitioner, is only this: bring the consciousness of the presence of God to the individual, and the presence of God will solve the problem in its own way, in God's own way. You cannot possibly know what God has in store for you. Whatever desire you may have is only based upon your past experience and has made you believe that that you desire is or will be good for you. Often you get it and it doesn't turn out that way. Now, the safe and sure demonstration is the spiritual one, in which you acknowledge that you do not know what God's plan is for you and that you await God's revelation of his plan. Then, when you have thus released yourself into God, you will find that your way will be spiritually led, but harmoniously so. Now, that brings us to this point. When you are facing a problem or an appearance, and whether it is your own or another's, your first step is, in some measure, to go through the reminding of yourself, or bringing to conscious remembrance, one or more of these principles with which we are working. Oh yes, let me give you right here another one. On all matters that have to do with human relationships, whether marital or between parent and child, or management and labor, or neighbors, or citizens of a country, wherever human relationships are concerned, the principles are clearly given to us in the chapter Relationship of Oneness in the Art of Spiritual Healing, and Love Thy Neighbor in Practicing the Presence. I have actually witnessed the healing of literally hundreds upon hundreds of cases of discordant human relationships, brought them back into harmony through the principles that are given in those two chapters. Now, let us say that a problem has come to us of human relationships, and we pick up one of those chapters, if necessary both, and often merely a half of one, until a particular truth stands out to us. Then we turn within. We put the books away and we turn within in our meditation or treatment, and for a minute or two or three or four or five, we ponder this statement or these statements that have stood out to us. And then we get quiet and turn within, very much in the sense of, "Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth." This means now that we are going to be still, we are going to be receptive, as if we were actually expecting to hear the still small voice. It may happen that we will hear it. Often it happens that we don't. But it really makes no difference one way or the other. What does make a difference is that after we have known this specific truth regarding this human relationship, we now, and remember, we haven't fastened this onto any persons. We've turned away from personalities or persons and to the principle in this chapter. And now we are receptive. Inwardly, our ears are open. Our mind is alert. because we're expecting God to speak. He uttered his voice, the earth melteth. We are waiting for an impartation from the Spirit. We are waiting for some sign of God's grace, of God's presence. And so we are still, our inner ears are opened, we're alert, we're attentive, but we're not strained. And if we find ourselves becoming strained, immediately relax and start over again, because there is no virtue in mental power or mental strain. There must be a relaxing from mental power and mental strain. There must just be an expectancy. Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. And as you succeed in that inner stillness, you will either feel this deep breath. You may receive an actual message. You may actually hear the still small voice, or you may get some impression, or you may get nothing more than this deep breath which sort of takes the weight off your shoulders and assures you that God is on the scene. Now, any sign that you get, any feeling that you get that God is on the scene is really your assurance of omnipresence. And then where the presence of the Lord is, there is liberty. Where the presence of the Lord is, there the illusion is dissolved. The appearance is dissolved. The sin, the fear, the disease, the misunderstanding, these things are cleared up. The barriers toward harmony dissolve. Whatever it is of any nature is dissolved merely because, I shouldn't say merely, but because you have attained the actual presence of God. Not theoretically, not in a cliche, not in an affirmation, but in an actual experience. Now, it is the same when you are dealing with claims of a physical or mental or moral nature. You turn to your principles. First of all, remembering to impersonalize, so that you don't attach any of this to a person, any of this claim that's presenting itself. Impersonalize, and then be sure that you nothingize in the realization that what is not ordained of God is not power. Whatever it is that has no law of God cannot maintain itself or sustain itself. And you go through in conscious remembrance whatever of these principles would seem to apply to that situation, and then again you go beyond the letter of truth into the spirit of truth by taking the same attitude. Speak, Lord, thy servant heareth. Thou utterest thy voice, and the whole earth melteth. The still small voice will thunder down in history and dissolve every sense of evil. And then you're listening, and you're still. And you may hold that for 30, 40, 50 seconds. You may hold it for a minute, 2 minutes. And that's all that's necessary. It takes time before you can really maintain that stillness for 3 or 4 minutes without it going into a mental exercise. And it must not go into a mental exercise. It must always be an emptiness, a listening. I can of my own self do nothing. It is the Father within me that must do the works. He that is within me is greater than any of these appearances that confront me. And then, in this waiting, in this stillness and silence, this presence and power which is already within you now comes out into conscious expression, comes out into actual awareness, and the presence of God is on the scene. And then you know that whatever is necessary in this demonstration will take place. Now, it doesn't mean that just because you receive the assurance of God on the scene that the healing will instantly take place or completely take place, because there are some barriers to instantaneous healing. And these are not your fault. When you have come this far and have come into the ability to be still and attain this awareness of God, then the responsibility is not on your shoulder. The responsibility for the work is on this divine presence. But sometimes it will not manifest as healing until some kind of a change takes place in the patient. Now, the fault is not a conscious one on the part of the patient, as I've told you. But there are things that act as barriers. In other words, it is said that ignorance is no excuse before the law. You're just as guilty when you're ignorant of the law. And it is certainly true spiritually. We as individuals in the human scene, very few of us, I'm sure, were ever brought up with the idea of just coming to know God. Whatever religion was given to us was more for the idea of what we were going to get from religion. We could pray to God and get, or by being obedient we would get, or by observing these rites and rituals we would get. In other words, God and religion were only the way stations toward the fulfilling of our human desires. They were not the object of the religious life. But with us, there is no way to attain our good through God. In our work, we can only attain God. And then whatever of good unfolds is the added things. In other words, on the spiritual path, you do not go to God for anything. You do not go to God for any accomplishment. You do not go to God except for God realization. Now, this is the goal of the mystical path. This is not the goal of the ordinary religious path. This is not the goal of many metaphysical paths. But it is the goal of the infinite way. It is the attainment of God realization so that we can ultimately reach that state of consciousness described by Paul, I live, yet not I, Christ liveth my life. There is a spiritual presence within me that is living my life. It sends me in every direction that I go to or in. It performs that which is given me to do. It draws unto me these classes. It prepares these messages. It does all these things without human aid, without advertising, without promising, without sending out, without proselyting, without organizing. It, the Spirit of God, moves before me and brings this work to fruition, and I go along to perform the work that is merely given me to do as an instrument. So it is with each of us in this work. the time eventually comes when we are not fulfilling our own desires, when we are not fulfilling our own wishes, but we are living so constantly in this realization of He that is within me. He performeth that which is given me to do. He perfecteth that which concerneth me. The Father within me, He liveth my life. So it is in our healing work then. We do not use God or truth, but in this inner stillness and silence, we become a transparency that God can flow through and use us. God can appear through our consciousness and perform its work in the experience of our patients and students. In other words, we are the stillness, we are the silence through which God works. And God is invisible, therefore you never see God at work. You only see the fruits of God's work. And you see that in the improved lives of the students. You see it in their improved health, in their improved supply, in their protection, in their happiness. The fruits you see. But God is always invisible. Now, it is only possible for individuals to have this experience of God realization at will when they have reached that state of consciousness in which they are no longer using God as a power over error, when in some degree they have learned not to be afraid of the germs, the infection, the contagion, the storm, the lack, the limitation, realizing that nothing out here moves me, nothing out here affects me, but the activity of God in my consciousness will affect everything out here as long as I am the transparency, the stillness, the quietness. Therefore, I am not using God or truth, but God or truth is using me as an instrument through which it operates and appears in the experience of all of us. Now, it is for this reason that our main work is developing this state of consciousness that no longer hates or fears error and no longer loves it, but really has only a love for the invisible, the spiritual, and has all its hope and confidence and reliance on this infinite invisible that is within all of us, closer than breathing, nearer than hands and feet. Then, when you are no longer afraid of infection or contagion, when you are no longer afraid of fevers or growths, now you can be still. Now you can be still and know that I, in the midst of you, am God. I, in the midst of you. The very I that you declare, the very I that you speak, I, in the midst of you, is God. And I will never leave you nor forsake you. I will be with you unto the end of the world. Now you can rest in this inner peace, in this inner assurance, for you have learned the name of God, and you have not learned the dwelling place of God. You know why the Master said, know ye not that ye are the temple of God? Know ye not that your body is the temple of God? The place whereon thou standest is holy ground. For I, in the midst of you, am your bread and meat and wine and water. I am the resurrection that will restore unto you the lost years of the locust. I am the resurrection. I am the power that will lift you out of mortal sense, out of physical sense, and bring you to the ascension where you will realize divine consciousness. You see, the church has misunderstood the resurrection of Jesus. They have him resurrected with the same old body that he was buried in. This isn't a resurrection at all. This isn't a resurrection. The true resurrection is being resurrected out of the tomb of flesh into the awareness of your spiritual identity and spiritual form. You can have your resurrection here on earth. You need not wait for death or a physical tomb. You are in the only physical tomb there is, and that is the sense of physical body. And to be resurrected out of that is an act of your consciousness. In other words, when you make of your consciousness a stillness and a silence, a peace, so that the presence and power of God can manifest itself, God will lift you out of the physical sense of health as well as the physical sense of disease and reveal to you your immortal, eternal, spiritual being and body. To know him aright is life eternal. And that life eternal is lived in your infinite individual selfhood. And it is here and it is now. The Master did not come to put us through death for a resurrection, but to give us our resurrection in life, so that we may rise above this tomb of mortal belief, of the belief of physical body, into the awareness of our true selfhood, which is Christhood. The selfhood of each of us is Christhood, and our body is the living, spiritual temple of God. That awareness only comes through a transition in consciousness, and it takes place when you are in meditation. And you cannot successfully meditate while you are thinking of God doing something, or being a power, or being used. You can only be in the true meditation when you have released yourself from the desire for all power. Released yourself into the state of consciousness revealed in the 23rd Psalm. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. And that's it. The Lord is my shepherd. There is no question there of going to get God to bring us supply or to do something or to heal us. There is an inner assurance, the Lord is my shepherd. And you see, when you're in that consciousness, there's a very simple thing for God to slide right in. And the first thing you know, you are in communion with God. But always remember that it comes only to those who have given up the desire to use God or to achieve something through God, and who have come to realize to know God aright is enough for one lifetime. To know God aright is enough for me. I'll ask nothing beyond that. I'm sure that I could walk in tatters if I were walking with God and not know it, although I doubt that tatters would remain long. This too will always give you the answer to a question that keeps arising continuously. Won't we sometimes organize or be organized or have memberships? And the answer, you must see, is no. It could not be. Because this work will not appeal to all who desire memberships. It will not appeal to all who are merely seeking something through God. This work will hold those who need no human ties, who need no human companionships, who need no human help of any nature, who want to be led back to God, and who can find that where two or more are gathered together, there am I in the midst, or even one with God is a majority. And therefore, this work will have appeal only for those who are drawn together through the Spirit. And so it will be, you may always have that ready answer. It would be impossible to organize this. It would be impossible to have membership. For this is merely the presenting to the world of a message showing how to go back within oneself and make contact with the presence, the Spirit of God, and then be free. One can do this in a church or out, but it is not necessary to organize another church for it. The teaching is available to all who seek it and want it, and then make use of it in whatever way God may lead them. And now retire within and realize, I have meat the world knows not of. I seek no demonstration. I seek only the realization of God. I rest in the assurance of omnipresence, that where I am, God is, and all that the Father hath is mine. I rest and relax in this assurance of omnipresence. I relax in the assurance of omniscience, the all-knowing God that already knoweth our need, the divine love whose pleasure it is to give us the kingdom. Relax and rest, and realize that I that am within you, I who am closer to you than breathing, I will never leave thee, and I am thy bread, and I am thy water, I am thy companionship, I am thy home, I am the health of thy countenance. I am all in all to thee, and I will never leave thee nor forsake thee. Turn unto me and be saved. Turn unto me, cease ye from man whose breath is in his nostril. Put not your faith in princes. Seek not your help in outer means, but let me be the divine presence that goes before you to make the crooked places straight. Let this I that is within you go before you to prepare those mansions for you. Let this I that is within you be the substance and the law unto your being. Do not fear anything external to yourself. And since God is within you, there is nothing within you that need be feared. You are the temple of God, while you are dwelling in the realization that I in the midst of you am mighty. I in the midst of you am your God. I am Emmanuel, God with us. I am omnipresence, and I will never leave thee, and I will be thy bread, and I will be thy resurrection. I will be thy life eternal. I am thy life eternal. I am. Just relax and rest in the knowledge that I am, and that I am in the midst of you. Whatever it is that may ever be necessary in your life, I am the substance of it, and I am the law unto it, and I am the form and expression of it. Relax in this assurance of the I that I am within you. And above all things, maintain this sacredly and secretly. Remember, this is given unto you because your state of consciousness prepared you to be here to receive it. Therefore, keep it as yours. Share it only on those rare occasions when someone is as desirous of it as you are at this moment. And always realize this: it is a secret, the name of God. The identity of God is secret and sacred, and it is therefore said that we must not profane the name of God. We must not take the name of God in vain. In that consciousness, be assured of this, that you will always have the letter of truth to serve you as a conscious reminder, but it will enable you to settle back into the spirit of truth, into an inner communion with God. And since God is within you, since God is closer to you than breathing, remember that communion with God is a present possibility. And communion with God is the most desirable relationship there is in the world, because it is the cement of all other relationships. When we are consciously one with God, we are consciously one with each other. When we are consciously in at one-ment with God, we are one with our good in every form. And so it is until our concluding classwork tomorrow night. And if you have any questions, please be sure to write them out and have them on this table before we start, so that when we complete our work tomorrow night, you will go out of here in the assurance that you are fulfilled. Thank you.